I'm really excited. We're really lucky to have the next speaker here, Michelle Dickinson. So, Michelle has a background in materials engineering and materials science. She's really moved on from her work in the scientific disciplines of the lab that she runs at the University of Auckland, and is stretching out around how we can connect science to the world through communications and education. She does fantastic work for Women in Science, otherwise known as Nano Girl, and really excited, and welcome to the stage, Michelle Dickinson.
And so I'd like to ask you all a question, and the question is, who is your favorite teacher? Just have a think back to your past. And there's usually no more than 2 that you can remember. Of the 30-something teachers you may have had in your life, there are usually 1 or 2 that stand out as your favorite. And they don't stand out as your favorite because it was your favorite subject, necessarily. Mine was an English teacher. I'm terrible at English. But he was passionate, he engaged, he made me love the subject. It wasn't about learning, it was about being. And typically, if you think back to your favorite teacher, it's about the emotional connection you have with that person and their love for their subject that connects you to the topic, whether or not you are good at that subject or not. And so I feel very passionately about how do we get our kids excited about the world and everything by being passionate teachers. And a teacher is just somebody who knows a little bit of something. I'm not talking about qualified teachers. I'm talking about everybody here who can pass on something to somebody else. Our neural connections are changing. In 1972, the average age that a child communicated with digital technology, and typically then it was television, was 4.5 years old. Today, the average age that our children interact with digital technology is 4 months old. We usually give our child an iPad from a very young age, and they learn to swipe. And I have seen toddlers swipe people because they're boring, because they have no concept that this swipey thing doesn't work on objects other than their iPad. So, what's going on here? So I've been doing a lot of studies. No, true story. You've never had a toddler swipe you, now you know why they're doing it. So I'm really kind of interested in this, and there's this backlash on are we giving our kids too much digital technology? Should we be concerned? Look, I think it's just happening, and I think that we have to deal with this. What we are seeing is it's changing the neural pathways for the brains of children. It's making them disseminate information very quickly. They're used to flashy lights and quick information, and they have a much shorter attention span. The correlation studies show that the more digital technology a child has up to the age of 5, the less attention span they have from the ages of 5 to 11. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's only a bad thing because we teach things in an attentive way. We have our classroom set up to be our classes, whereas our kids have a 2-minute attention span before they need to move on to something else. And so our question is, are we teaching in a way that we're training our kids to learn? We now have this new neural pathway for our babies that they're growing up with, yet we teach in a very old style of way. So Nano Girl, I didn't pick that name. So I'm a nanotechnologist, and I've been doing quite a bit of public speaking, and what I found is that children weren't used to seeing somebody talk about science in a way that they understood. And they definitely weren't used to seeing a girl do that. And a lot of girls started writing to me. If I showed you the fan mail that Nano Girl gets, handwritten letters, she got an email yesterday that I sent out to the world. She has become a celebrity who's not involved in sport. So our kids want to grow up to be like their sports person, and we only give them celebrities that are either in music or sport, and they've never really had somebody outside of that box. And I realized that they were hungry for that. And Nano Girl it's ridiculous. I get kids send me like their birthday gifts. You know, I wasn't able to make it to their party, so they'll send me the little treats and a bit of cake. Nano Girl gets way more mail than I do. And the kids name me. So Nano Girl just sort of stuck. Kids were like, hey, it's Nano Girl. And that's sort of become this thing that kids are aspiring to be like. She's a scientist. She does cool stuff. She blows things up. She's not intimidating. She doesn't use long words. She explains things. I do quite a bit of kids' TV as well as regular TV. And I realize that our kids actually have a hunger for science, but are also very intimidated by science in the classroom. So how do we educate what is traditionally an intimidating male subject in a way that everybody can understand? And I realized I have this massive girl following. And this is interesting because I'm an engineer and I don't work with girls and I don't play with girls and I don't see girls in my environment just because there aren't many girls in engineering. And yet, whenever Nano Girl does something in public, like I do public science events, it's 80% girls coming. And this is not the demographic of what we see regarding studying. I don't see lots of girls studying engineering, science, maths. And yet at this age, so up to the age of about 12 or 13, girls are following Nano Girl everywhere. And it got me thinking about what's your learning style. There are 4 basic learning styles, and you have one that you are strongest at. And so there's visual learning, there's audio, do you listen? R is writing, do you write? And kinesthetic, do you touch? So I learn through visual and touch. I like to touch things, pull them apart, see them, shape them. And what I found is school was really hard in the science subjects and maths. And that's because they're typically taught by theory. You write something on a board and then you're supposed to remember that. I didn't have hands-on maths. And I found maths really difficult because I'm a hands-on learner. And so what I've been really trying to do is create a situation where you teach and you learn in all 4 styles. So you typically teach in the way that you learn. And what I found is that I was taught by males who are theoretical, auditory learners. So they speak at me and expect me to remember that and understand that. I want them to throw something at me, I'll take it apart and I'll give them back and I'll be like, oh, I get it. And what I've realized is that we're losing a lot of girls, especially in the science subjects, because we don't teach it in a way that's hands-on and visual. We're very much like, here's a textbook, write down this mathematical problem, derive it, and what's the answer? And there's no final application for them to figure out where that fits in the world. And where do you live? In the UK this year, so September last year was the start of their term, the UK has now changed their law so that every child from the age of 5 to 16 now compulsory has to learn to code. By the age of 11 in the UK, each child will be able to code in 2 separate languages. We don't do that here, we don't do that in America. And we are growing up in a generation of kids who swipe right all the time, yet they can understand the technology, they don't know what's inside it. They can't code the system. I call it a generation who know how to read technology but don't know how to write technology. And so my concern is that a whole demographic of people, the whole of the UK, all these kids are now growing up being able to code in 2 languages by the age of 11, and we still don't have coding in our main curriculum, and it's definitely not compulsory. So where you live is going to have make a big difference on what your skills are in the tech sector. And how much money do you have? This is a really big question, because the amount of money you have determines whether or not you have a computer at home. And if you have a computer at home, it's much more likely that you're going to learn how to use computers than if you don't. So the demographic of where you live is really important. And I felt really passionately about it because I didn't come from a home that was very well off. And I was very lucky that my dad bought me a computer that I totally destroyed and pulled apart, but I learned how it worked. And that gave me the hands-on learning skills that I've been able to use today. So I teach engineering at the University of Auckland. And my average class, and this is a very stereotypical picture, my average class is a white male who has come from a private school from an upper to middle class family. That is my demographic. I have 985 kids in my class. I call them kids, they're 18. 985 engineers of my class, of which the majority are like this. Now, there are some exceptions. We do have some girls, we do have some minorities, but I'm not seeing these faces change. I'm not seeing this equality come out. I'm seeing the same proportions come in again and again. And this really concerns me. And what else concerns me is the fact that to be an engineer now in my faculty, it's harder to get in academically than medicine and law. So we're only bringing in the brightest being those who can pass an exam really well. And again, we've seen that those who pass exams very well come from schools that train you on how to pass an exam. And those tend to be in rich areas, and those tend to be private schools. The poor kids are missing out, not because of their fault, not because they're not smart, because the system that they're taught in is different. I want to change this model. We have a shortage of people in the STEM subjects, and what we're doing is bringing them more of the same. What I want to do is diversify this platform. So Vaughan Rowsell, who many of you may have met yesterday, who's the CEO of Vend, and myself, we butt our heads together and said, this is broken. How do we fix it? And so we've co-founded a charity together. And we have both have very unique but different backgrounds in that we both come from very poor families. And at the age of 8 or 9, both of our parents said, here's a computer. We don't know what to do with this, but we know it's going to be important to your future. Do it. And we both learnt to code at the age of 8, and I also learnt to solder and take apart things. And we've set up this. This is Tech Rangers. This is OMGTech. And this is what we're trying to do to help change the world so that kids can have more access to technology education, no matter what your demographic. So this is my childhood and Vaughan's childhood, basically soldering stuff at the age of 8, being creative, being hands-on, burning your fingers, learning how to code in DOS. This was before the internet. And just generally playing around and having a curious enough nature and enough mentors that we could ask questions to. This is before the internet. You couldn't just Google an answer. That we taught ourselves to code and we taught ourselves to build circuits. And we've both become very successful in our independent careers from very poor backgrounds. And we wanted to be able to find those kids who came from backgrounds like us and be able to be their mentors. So how do we run it? We run workshops. They last for one day. They're usually all day on a Saturday. And each of our workshops is crowdfunded. So those of you who were here yesterday and saw Anna give her talk, we run ours through her Pledge Me campaign. And typically a workshop costs about $2,000, and we ask the public for money. 50% of our places, we usually have 80 students in a workshop, are funded by the public, and 50% are funded by people who can afford it. What that means is that we have a demographic of 80 kids, of which 50% come from very poor backgrounds, and 50% are able to afford to learn how to do this. We also on Pledge Me offer a 1-for-1. So if you are paying for your child to come, you can also buy a child for an underprivileged child to come to that same workshop too. Our tickets are like $50. So for both kids. So it's not very expensive. We're all run by volunteers. And we've successfully crowdfunded every workshop we've done, and we always raise more money than we need, which is great because then we put it into more resources for next time. So the community is on board, and we run them in areas that are very, very, really struggling. And what we do is we talk to the library network close by, and we say, because there's 3D printers that you can move around to different libraries, and we say, please can we put the resources in this area so when we leave, the kids still have stuff behind. All of our electronics are donated, so I ask all of the big corporates. They usually have a 2-year cycle on their laptops, and then they put them in e-waste. So I say, instead of going to e-waste, please can you donate all of the laptops that you have that are 2 years old to this? Because we have kids who don't have devices, and you can't practice if you don't have a device. And all the companies are like, oh yeah, we were just going to throw it out. Here, have this. 2-year-old Macs are what we're getting for our kids to be able to learn on. What does our funding go towards? We bus your kids in, because we understand that on a Saturday, your parents may not be interested in your education, and this may be too hard for you. So we make sure that you have safe transport to and from our venue, and we feed you. And we feed these kids food that they've never seen before, fruits and vegetables and healthy things, and they complain and they whine and they're like, oh, I'm not touching this, this is not chips. And we're like, well, then you'll go hungry. And then they see somebody else eat this beautiful piece of fruit that's organic, and they're like, all right, I'll have a bit. And by the end of it, all these kids are exposed to certain types of foods that they may have never had before. And we explain the importance of nutrition to their brain. We explain the importance of good food for good learning. And by the end of it, they're usually pretty open. They do resist at the beginning. These are kids who are brought up on fatty, fried, processed foods who don't have whole grain vegetables that are organic. So as part of our process, we're not just teaching tech, we're teaching about nutrition and how it's important to run your body as a well-oiled machine, which includes your intake of food, and a little bit of understanding about food. So what do? We run 6 different workshops, and they're an hour each. And so the kids just do a workshop and rotate, and they have 10 minutes in between to stretch and run around, and we do crazy things. We teach robotics. We teach you how to build a robot. We teach you how to program a robot. We teach you all sorts of things about robots. Kids start with nothing, end up building a robot within an hour. We teach you how to code. We teach you how to code in an hour using Scratch so that you can build the game Flappy Bird. You can change it from a bird to a bat or whatever you want. Within an hour. Kids go from no programming skills to be able to write their own game and app within an hour. We teach you 3D printing. We teach you CAD. We teach you how to draw a shape. And then we get you to send it and watch it on a 3D printer be built. Kids go home with something that they've designed and they've made. We teach science. We teach all sorts of science. We blow things up. We teach science about the body. Currently I'm getting kids to run around and measure their pulse rate and talk about exercise and how our body flows with blood and other things. And we have my favorite space, the breaker space. This is where you take an electronic something and you pull it apart and you see what's inside. Because kids aren't allowed to do this anymore. If you look at your smartphone, it doesn't have screws on it. I grew up taking things apart and figuring out how it worked. But we have this generation now where everything is so sealed you can't open it. And so kids don't know what a circuit board looks like. They don't know what's inside their phone. They don't know what's in their iPad. They've never seen the inside because you get in trouble if you try and open it. So we give them like plasma TVs. We have all sorts of things. Hard drive computers. We give them a screwdriver and we're like, go explore. And this is my favorite space. Because kids have the freedom to touch, to be, to feel, to ask questions, and to break stuff and never have to put them back together. So how do we do this and what do we see our vision? This is all open source. So each of our workshops now we've written the curriculum for so that anybody can run our workshop. We don't want this just to be us. We want this to be taken out around the world. So 3D printing, if you have access to a 3D printer at your library, for example, we will tell you exactly the free software you need to download, how to do it. You don't need any experience in 3D printing to be able to run our 3D printing workshop. Same goes for Scratch. We have all of the step-by-step instructions so that you, as somebody who's never coded before, can still mentor these children in coding. So we've written this, what I call a recipe book for our workshops. So our volunteers don't have to have any experience, you just have to have passion. And if you're really stuck in trying to find the electronics, we will help you do that. But usually you can find a local company or somewhere that will host you that will have computers. Your local library, you can have a 3D printer put into temporarily if you live in New Zealand. And the science stuff is all kitchen science. So I'll show you in a minute, but it's marshmallows and it's baking soda and it's stuff that you can buy without needing a permit. So we didn't want this to just be ours. We wanted this to have access to especially rural communities where they don't have a strong science in their school. And I just want to show you some pictures. So this is what the kids look like. They're engaged. These are kids from very poor schools, usually who are getting into a little bit of trouble at school. They concentrate. We have no problem with kids running, distractions. They are totally focused. These kids are currently playing with CAD images, making something for the 3D printer. They sit quietly. We have these open source rooms, open access rooms, and we're worried that kids would like annoy each other if they're in different workshops. They're totally focused. This is a Saturday in their own time, and we do kids from the age of 5 up. They're totally focused. We have a mixture of girls and boys. Our demographic is 50% those from what we would call poorer societies, 50% kids who pay. We have 50% girls and 50% boys, minimum. I don't run it unless there's 50% girls. Although all the pictures I've noticed are of boys, I'm sorry. So we have a photographer who just takes random shots. So these are all, the kids aren't posing, this is just kids doing what they do. We found that there's a lot of teamwork and building, and what we've been able to do is get kids who would never normally socialize because of their economic climates to make friends and to work together. Because there's no uniform, because you don't know what school these kids have come from, you don't know how rich or poor they are. And kids are just kids when you throw them in a room together. And so now we've created friendships for life with these kids from very different social backgrounds. This is just them this is them printing their stuff out in the 3D printer. Girls helping boys, helping girls. There's no differential here on the gender, that nobody seems to notice that there's a gender difference at this age. And what we found is that although we gave them all assigned individual tasks, everybody wanted to work together. And so one person would gather around a computer, the next person would help, and actually we had these teams forming just naturally, all trying to find the same end to their purpose that we gave them. And we have girls building robots. This is one of my favorite robots to build. Girls fascinated in building robots, girls gathering together, girls actually taking over because they have a bit more of a concentration span and they're really good with some of the little finer details. And girls telling the boys what to do, which I love because I don't get to see this in my job usually. So this is a TV and everybody's taking out a screw and they're all working together to try and disassemble this as nicely and neatly as possible, because they think we're going to make them put them back together. We don't, but we make them take out the circuits, we make them understand how their TV works at home. They now understand that there's LEDs in there, they now understand there's circuits in there, and they've never seen the inside of a television before. And as an engineer, people might want to know, what do you build as an engineer? I build marshmallow catapults. You want to take kitchen stuff? This is wood skewers, marshmallows, a rubber band, and a plastic spoon. And we use engineering principles to make a marshmallow catapult. And then at the end of the day, I sit at one end of the room, and the goal is who can get a marshmallow fired into my mouth wins. I've never been hit by marshmallows so many times in my life. But this is engineering. We think outside the box. We're building, we're constructing, we're making, and we're eating all at the same time. And then we just throw stuff at each other. Girls, boys, every age are learning to interact together. And we survey the kids before and after. So the kids usually that we survey have no technology at home, no interaction with technology. And we get quotes like, I thought only rich kids could be computer programmers, but now I see I can be one too. That one always makes me cry. My dad is a truck driver, so I thought that's all I could ever be. But now I want to do something different. I never knew learning could be fun. And that just goes back to those teachers who you don't like a subject because of the teacher sometimes, not because of the subject. I learned that just because I'm not good at tests doesn't mean I'm not smart. And this is where we promote kinesthetic learning. Tests assess one way that the brain works, but actually, if you're a hands-on learner, that's okay too. We just have an assessment system that doesn't always recognize how good that is. I learned that science is for girls too. In one workshop, we have totally changed the mindset of some of these kids from these really poor areas to just think outside the box and have hope that they can do something different. So that's OMGTech, that's what we're doing, and I hope you would all like to join us. Thank you.